Increasingly, since the 80s, we've looked at kids more and more like mini adults.
In the 80s and 90s, there was this super predator scare.
We sent them to prison environments, put razor wire around them, hired guards to guard them, put them in jumpsuits.
There was a lot of like a cultural and press conversation going on in the media about teenagers being incredibly scary and dangerous.
Unfortunately, what happens is they become, in many instances, certainly not all, but hardened criminals.
And there was magazines that came out sort of portraying young people as these frightening individuals that you could see on the street.
It's amazing how many kids across the country we send essentially to juvenile prison for things that you wouldn't necessarily send adults to prison for.
The assumption has always been that separating young people who have committed a crime from society is the thing that protects, that creates public safety.
But we take kids out of their home environments when they get in trouble and send them to these faraway institutions up in the Adirondacks and think that somehow we're going to cure them of what ails them and return them to the South Bronx, better able to cope with what they're going to find when they get there.
To overuse it, to default to it for all punishment for kids who are guilty of low-level nonviolent misdemeanors, to put them in these facilities when we wouldn't put an adult in jail for what they did. That's insane.
Right now, it costs $240,000 to lock up a young person for 1 year. It's incredibly expensive.
These facilities, for the most part, are poorly run.
The kids are getting beaten up in those facilities up there when they're not being neglected.
They provide poor rehabilitation services, and that's reflected in the across-the-board, obscenely high recidivism rates. They
get rearrested in numbers that would challenge a government bureaucracy if we were trying to hit those numbers.
Currently, our system has had a recidivism rate of 89%.
We know that taking them away makes them worse.
I say often that I run a training school for criminals, up-and-coming criminals.
Various things are necessary for successful reform. One of them, unfortunately, is scandal.
There were articles out about really poor conditions of confinement.
Some kids were killed at facilities. Kids were systemically having their jaws broken and bones broken for trivial matters like talking in line or stealing a cookie at lunch.
And so the governor decided to create this task force for the transformation of juvenile justice to help us think, what do we need to do to improve our system?
Also wisely, they hired the Vera Institute of Justice to staff that.
They were the right group of folks to bring in to help us. They had a track record, they know New York, they are New York in many, many ways, so it was an easy fit.
The governor launched this task force to have an independent body of stakeholders from across law enforcement, prosecution, defense, the judiciary, advocacy groups, community-based groups, service providers to come together and really take a critical look at the juvenile correctional system in New York State.
Vera was wonderful. Vera was like the project manager in many ways in that it helped guide the process by doing the research, by collating the data, by doing analysis.
No one wanted a sort of blue ribbon commission that would write a nice report that would just sit on a shelf. It had to and would have an impact.
After a year of deliberation and hard work, we had this task force that issued a report. It provides a blueprint. It really outlines, these are the things that you need to do.
But even before the task force, Vera's been working on this issue a long time. What Vera has done and what the whole system is now trying to do is keep these kids in the community, but to do something for them and their families.
Vera works with juvenile justice agencies to help them integrate more family-focused approaches into their work. So rethinking visitation policies, case management practices.
This isn't just about tear them all down and let the kids go free. That's ridiculous, right? So we're going to need to take a very careful look at the young people in these facilities and a very careful look at the kinds of programs that are working nationally to help young people flourish in the community.
To create a treatment option like APT, where families are given an opportunity to shape the treatment on their own terms, in their own communities, in their own homes, is a very empowering experience. Yes, treatment can take place in an institutional setting, but the restrictive, punitive nature of it doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with an empowering treatment experience that will really lead to positive change in a person's life.
Case management staff started calling families on a monthly basis and giving them an update on how the youth was doing. It's a very simple step, but it speaks volumes.
We bring them together with their families. We work with kids in context, in the family context. It's in real time, it's not abstract. We're not asking them to talk about their families in an abstract sense in a room somewhere far away from their families. We work with their families in the here and now. And it works.
It may be counterintuitive for some people to understand. I mean, you can lock up fewer kids and people can be safer.
In fact, we have about 53% of the young people in my system there now are there for nonviolent, low-level misdemeanors.
That's why I think a lot of these reforms will happen, because in the end, you can spend a lot less money than we spend now, and people and kids and communities will be better off.
What's next? Well, you know, it's more work to make sure that we're implementing change.
Incremental reform at this point is not going to cut it.
Right now is an incredibly exciting time to work in this field. The good work is also getting the positive attention now, not just the scary anecdotes.
Doesn't mean it's easy. There are still political issues, there are still unions to deal with. So none of this is easy, but there is a moment now.
And shifting from this sort of punitive approach and really working towards an approach that holds young people accountable and makes sure that they are given opportunities to succeed.
Family has a voice again.
That's where the task force and Vera's work helped point us to, and now we have to close the deal.